Y'all, I'm so excited about our art project that we're working on this week. We're going to be painting these gorgeous watercolor fall leaves, and this is actually a two-part project. So we'll start it this week and then we'll finish it up next week. There is so much packed into this project. We're going to be talking about organic shapes and symmetry, warm colors, cool colors, positive space, negative space. We're going to be practicing some watercolor techniques that you've already learned, and also some that I'm going to show you a couple tricks that you might not know about yet, and even maybe you'll get to do something super cool and kind of scientific and magical next week. So stay tuned. I'm really excited. Let's get started. Okay, so for this project, you need a piece of paper. I'm using kind of a thicker piece of tag board or cardstock, but any paper you can find is fine. You need a black oil pastel, your watercolors, and if any of you still haven't picked up your watercolors and you're not sure where to pick them up, shoot me an email and I'll make sure you get them. And a little cup of water. Okay, so we're drawing these fall leaves, but we're not just doing any fall leaves. We are doing symmetrical fall leaves. Symmetrical means that your leaf is going to look the same on both sides of your line of symmetry. So you need a line of symmetry. So you're going to fold your paper in half just like this and crease it really good. When you open it back up, you'll see that there's a crease right down the middle. That's going to be your line of symmetry. Okay, so this is a cool trick, y'all. We are going to draw only half of the leaf. Let me show you what I mean. I think that I included like a PDF of different styles of leaves, and you can print that out, or you can look at that on the computer while you draw this, or you can just draw your own leaf what you want it to look like. It's just up to you. I am going to draw my own leaf that I just have in my head, and I'm gonna draw just half of it. So here's what I'm gonna do. See this line? I'm gonna start up at the top of the line and draw half of my leaf, right? I made sure to start at the top of the crease. I made sure at the bottom I ended touching the crease. I did leave a little bit of room at the bottom for a stem, but there is my leaf, right? Okay, so this is the cool part, watch. We are going to fold this in half, right? And you know how oil pastel is really, really smudgy? It kind of makes a mess and gets everywhere sometimes. We're gonna use that to our advantage. We're gonna fold this in half and use your hand to kind of rub up and down on your piece of paper. And the heat and the pressure from your hand will make that oil pastel line that you drew, it'll make it kind of appear very faintly. Can y'all see how faint that is? Super faintly. You can barely see it, but you know what? That's okay. You don't need to see it really well, you just need to see it enough to trace it. So watch this. Now I'm gonna go and trace that line on the other side of my crease or my line of symmetry. And look, I have a perfectly symmetrical leaf that looks the same on both sides. I am going to add a stem to the bottom, and then I'm gonna kind of add some veins by just drawing a line straight up the middle and kind of some lines that kind of reach out into the edges of the leaf that I drew. They don't have to be perfect. The vein lines that you draw don't have to be symmetrical. They just, add a little bit of detail and texture to your symmetrical leaf. Okay, so now we're going to use our watercolors to paint our leaf. And since we're doing fall leaves, I want you to use fall colors which happen to be warm colors. Remember I said we were going to talk about warm and cool colors? So we're using orange, yellow, and red. Orange, yellow, red, orange, yellow, red. Those are the only colors we're going to use to paint our leaf. We're just using the warm colors. So here's how I have figured is the best way to use these paints, y'all. Dip your brush in the water, right? Then put it in the paint and kind of mix that paint with the water to get your brush nice and coated. See, I've got my brush good and coated. Okay, now you're thinking, oh, you're ready to paint. I've got water, I've got paint. Okay, but here's what I figured out these paints like to do. Go back in the water so that your brush is like double wet, and then kind of start to move your brush around on your paper. So when you're loading your brush before you paint, I want you to do water, paint, water, paper. And this is what I like to tell my younger students who are just learning how to paint using the watercolors. Pretend like your paintbrush is a ballerina, right? And ballerinas always dance on their tippy toes. So we're just really trying to use the tip of our brush, all right? We never want to like mash our brush down and scoot it around like that, because that messes up the brush's hair. And ballerinas don't scoot around on their bottoms, they dance on their tippy toes. So look, let's switch colors. We'll go water to rinse it out, paint, this time I'm using yellow, and I'm gonna mix my brush up to get it nice and coated. See? Water, paper. And I'm really trying to use all three of my warm colors and kind of blend them together to make a pretty fall leaf. Water, paint, water, paper. That little ballerina is just staying on her tiptoes. Never scoot, we don't want to scoot around on her bottom. No, we want to keep her on her toes. So water, paint, water, paper. Oh, see, I like that. I like it when they kind of bleed into each other. That always makes kind of a pretty design. Use lots of water, and look, right now I'm just not even using paint at all. I'm just kind of painting with water and letting the paint kind of flow into that water. Okay, so I'm gonna hit the time-lapse button so that y'all don't have to sit here and watch me paint this whole entire leaf for a real long time. So, I am finished painting my leaf, and let's go over some of the things that we learned about this week. First of all, organic shapes. Check. This leaf represents an organic shape. Okay, so a shape is an enclosed space. That means that, like, you know, the lines are connected all the way around, so it's an enclosed space. And an organic shape is a shape that looks like something that you would maybe see in nature. Obviously, you would see a leaf in nature. Organic shapes are irregular, they're kind of wonky and curvy. They do not look like a rectangle or a triangle or a circle or any shape that has its own name. A shape that you would see like in your math book or your geometry book. An organic shape, when we talk about shapes in art, is an enclosed space that looks like something you would find in nature. Check on organic shape. Next, symmetry. Check. We talked about symmetry. Symmetry is when something looks the same on both sides of a line of symmetry. So this, we made sure that we folded it in half so we had that line of symmetry going down the middle, and we made sure that we used that oil pastel and rubbed and then opened it back up and traced the line so we could be sure that our leaf was the same shape on both sides. Check for symmetry. Okay, what's next on the list? Warm colors. Yep, check for warm colors. We used red, orange, and yellow. Red, orange, and yellow on the leaf. Warm colors. Warm colors are colors that you would see like in a fire or a sunset. Warm colors, so check for warm colors. Okay, positive space. Let's talk about positive space. When we talk about positive space in art, that means the space that the subject of the art, the work of art, takes up. So obviously the subject of our work of art is a leaf, and we just filled in the positive space for this week. Next week, we'll work on the negative space or the background, but this week, we worked on the positive space. So check for positive space. Wax resist. We have learned about wax resist this year before. As you know, wax resist is when you use a crayon or an oil pastel. That is an art supply or a media that is made out of wax, and then you put watercolor over it. The watercolor resists sticking to that wax. So wax resist, check for that. What's last on the list? Oh, watercolor practice. Heck yeah, we did watercolor practice. We talked about getting our brush. Talked about doing, let's see, where's my water cup? Water, paint, water, paper, making sure our brush was nice and wet. We talked about keeping that brush up on her tippy toes and not scooting her around on her bottom. So we did lots of watercolor practice. So I am going to check that off the list too. Organic shapes, symmetry, warm colors, positive space, wax resist, and watercolor practice. Wow, we learned so much this week. Good job, everybody. Okay, next week we'll do our negative space. I hope everyone has fun making art.